Welcome to the Arts Performed podcast. This episode was recorded under the former title Student Expert Podcast. Please enjoy.
Welcome to Toby's Student Expert Podcast. On this platform, Toby will engage with student experts, their field of study, passions and interests. My name is Ollie Genbash. My field of study is politics and philosophy. My expertise is the field of resistance, mysticism, and particularly stand-up comedy and psychedelic experiences.
Are you an atheist?
No, and it's sort of...
So do you believe in God?
It's a difficult one. I mean, as I said, I think the universe is conscious. I think it is this whole thing experiencing itself.
Can I pose something to you? Atheism, belief in God, agnosticism.
I think atheism falls short purely on the scientific principle that you can't prove that something doesn't exist. So...
But then doesn't a belief in God equally is lacking of proof?
Yeah.
Right. So where does that leave agnosticism?
I think agnosticism is sort of a bit of a get out in a way. I don't know whether people should sort of label themselves as agnostics, because it's kind of like, well, if you don't know, then you don't know, and there's not really any point to put a label on it.
The reason I pose those three concepts kind of goes back to the idea of there's a particular way we live and there's a particular way we engage with the world, and that is to we're brought up to live on our own, to take care of ourselves, to consume, to produce, and I think those ideas are very familiar to kind of Judeo-Christianity. I see that it's a very Western idea of you either have God, or you have no God, or you have the possibility of God.
Yeah, I mean, it's all implying God. It's all implying this dualistic conception of spirituality.
I actually think most atheists, I believe that they don't believe in God, but they're so invested in the idea of God.
I mean,
they need God.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but that's just. I think to do with the fact that these terms, atheist, agnostic, theist, they're all thought up by the people in the Judeo-Christian religions, whereas you take something like Shinto in Japan, which is all about it's like heavy influence on animism. So the trees having spirits, the forest having, a spirit of the forest, the lakes, the rivers. There'll be certain areas that you go through, that will have like a certain spiritual significance. Mount Fuji is like considered to have a spirit there, and I think it sort of reduces this need for God. I think we kind of still aren't able to get out of this like nuclear family mindset when it comes to spirituality. I think because these things have been sort of stamped out, our connection to God, our direct connection to any spirituality, the creation of the church and priests and people being paid for the good word and everything. It's kind of like we feel like we need someone to tell us how to be.
Yes,
we need a God to tell us how to be.
Yeah.
We can't just talk to the trees, because that makes you seem like a stupid hippie. But going to a church and someone telling you God is in the building, that's not animism. That's not the spirit of that particular building. That is God, for some reason, has decided to be in, or supposedly in all churches, but not, just in your house. Whereas like Shinto would say, well, he's in the church, in the house, the spirit, can be whatever,
So can I go from that idea of Shintoism and kind of animism? What is your relationship with the environment? And I don't mean necessarily kind of the birds and trees and what have you. I mean physically your environment. Like, for example, this garden.
Yeah.
Is there something you can say about that, or is that too abstract a question?
I think there's a certain level of awareness that one has about nature. So, like the patterns of leaves moving, the sound of trees. My flat, I've got loads of plants on my windowsill. I have to have nature around. I've also got like different types of stones as well.
Different types of stones?
Yeah. That's just from being a kid, being really into geology.
Okay.
And just like collecting stones and pebbles. And just liking having them around. And I think that's the kind of thing about it, is like it's more this awareness of being part of nature, of being a part of everything. It's sort of one of the reasons why I kind of struggle around concepts such as like veganism and things like that. We're all this kind of one thing in nature, and to separate ourselves and say, I'm a human, I'm better, I have morals, I'm not going to eat that animal. It's almost like you're removing yourself from nature. You're actually putting yourself on a pedestal. Even though in your mindset it's like you're doing good for the nature. I think the attitude that kind of stuff breeds is like you are separating yourself more and more, and just losing that awareness. I just try and listen a lot when I'm in nature. I just like listening to like the patterns of bird song, patterns of the wind.
Since I got diagnosed with ADHD, I've been looking at different things on the internet and kind of trying to learn more about ADHD and how people kind of react to it, how people kind of treat it as well. So on the one hand, you have people taking using substances, especially stimulants. There's a thing that they say that it's kind of evolutionarily important for people to have certain traits and different traits, but particularly with ADHD, because you're seeking stimulation. The fact of being out in nature and lots of different things happening, not in a conventional, repetitive, sterile way, but in kind of random. Wild animals don't queue up at a bus stop.
Yeah. There's a whole concept of like seeing green foliage is good for your brain, things like this, and it's just stimulating being out in nature, and you'll have getting more oxygen and all these kind of basic things that we're lacking. It almost kind of gives us a bit of a mystical experience because we've been so detached from it. It's like, and even just this whole thing of talking about nature, it's like we, by our very language, we're detached from it because we see it as other. And that, for me, is the hardest thing, being a human being, is how it's like we have to kind of train ourselves to be part of nature. It's like things like that, you know, I don't know, it does make my brain think, well, maybe are those conspiracy theories right about us coming from a different planet, and you know, we're not actually originally from here, and that's why we kind of a lot of the time find a bit of unease, and we have to really make an effort to, like, I don't know, be in the nature, or but then maybe it's just that the conventions have been so kind of relentless in shaping people, you know. From the day you're born, you're just in this, put into society, and it's
So you talked about using substances. You talked about meditation and music as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a bit about that?
I mean,
you mentioned it earlier.
for me, music is the highest.
That's what you focus on.
Yeah, it's really, it's like the highest form of practice. You know, as I said before, I don't think I've had a kind of non-dualistic experience, but music is this, you know, is really this kind of non-dualistic moment that you're having. I think it's just sort of incredibly important for our functioning, you know. It's not you know, uniquely human, but certainly the complexities of it are uniquely human, you know. Okay, there's birds that sing and animals that communicate through song and calls and things like this, but I mean, it's, you know, it's like a different universe altogether. What we have, you know, we have you know, the broadest spectrum from commercialized nonsense to, you know, classical music, to everything in between. I think it's someone kind of explained it to me really nicely once when they were talking about jamming with people. I really like jamming with people, and they said, oh yeah, you know, it's kind of good because it's like, how many times in your life do you do something and just, you know that it's going to go right. And for me, it's a very sort of safe thing. I, you know, all the time just feel like, you know, if everything else in the world went away but I still had music, it'd be alright. And the kind of opposite, if I didn't have music, I would have absolutely no idea what I'd do. I'd probably go a bit mad. I think it's something which is just kind of inherently human about us.
I said something similar in the other interview that I did, and we were kind of going through that idea, particularly with music that is more kind of, I suppose it's wrong to say working class, but kind of more folk music. But I mean folk music not as in guitars and drums, folk music as in of communities.
Okay.
So you go to the kind of what's known as folk music, guitars, drums, violins, and there's a kind of repetitive, sometimes droning, but very kind of repetitive, and it's almost a mantra, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've also got club music, so acid house, rave music, house music. You've got a lot of reggae music, ska music, and rock music and heavy metal music. And although they're kind of very different within themselves, they have this very kind of. They often have this very repetitive, rolling, kind of drone to them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it transcends the experience we're having before we listen to it, and it brings us into a different state, if only for a moment. And I'm not necessarily talking for the listeners, and I'm not necessarily talking about exactly the same as being kind of drunk or. Well, actually, I mean, in a way, I suppose it is.
I kind of agree with you. You know, like the times when I know I'm listening to like an amazing piece of music is when I'll catch myself and I'll go, oh, I'm sitting on a train listening to a song, and that's kind of, I don't know. It's not like this escape, but it is this like getting to this higher point.
Now that's interesting. That word escape, and I think it goes back. It kind of ties nicely into what we were talking about earlier in terms of kind of this consumerism of psychedelics and different substances. That on the one hand, you can have people like yourself that engage with substances in a positive, creative, productive way, and then there's other people that can engage with that type of thing as. And like I said about myself, I have had a kind of romantic idea of psychoactive drugs like LSD or ayahuasca. But I know within myself, if I did that, I would just be waiting to get high. I think there's a similar thing to music as well.
Yeah.
Particularly in terms of combining drugs and music, there are people, particularly addicts, but not just addicts, that seek that as a consumer choice. And although they say, "Oh yeah, I'm going out to so and so to have a fabulous time with my friends and just to let my hair down," it's almost a need. It's an escape, as opposed to a connecting. How do you how would people know whether they're...
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Like, a lot of the time, every day I'm listening to music quite loudly.
Do you ever find yourself in any situation, either listening to music or taking substances, that you feel that you're escaping, as opposed to other times when you're connecting? Is that ever your experiences? Or
Yeah, for sure.
how do you know which is which?
Yeah,
it's obvious to you? Because now I know what I know of myself. It's obvious to me, but then kind of I'm an addict, so I have that clear cut idea of what, if I do that. That's
I think addiction's a really kind of interesting concept, because it's like, people drink coffee every day, but people aren't coffee addicts because it's not. Firstly, because they can get it all the time, and it's not like impacting their relationships. They can do it at work. It's not something they have to hide. It's legal. I think the problem of drugs being illegal by their very nature can often make people escape into them, because you can't just go to the supermarket and buy. You can't just be up front. So it's difficult to sort of necessarily be up front with yourself about why it is that you're doing it. If these things are sort of taboo by their very nature, then society is already telling you that you're escaping because you want something different to what's allowed and what's prescribed and what everyone else is doing. Cigarettes aren't an addiction. They are,
Mm.
but they're not really. No one's talking about the smoking epidemic, even though there is a smoking epidemic and hundreds of thousands of people are dying. It's not a problem because people aren't robbing stores, you know. They're not, you know, people can afford to get their cigarettes. It's all there. It's all
But when you're, because I'm guessing by the way you talk about this stuff, I'm guessing you're not an addict.
I mean,
Or are you?
I'm a medical, unofficial medical cannabis user, but it's got to the point that I've been using it for such a long time that I'm dependent on it. Quite possibly could have a psychological addiction, which I notice is more enhanced. I'm more aware of it when it's more difficult to get, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to find, particularly stuff like cannabis oil, rather than just getting a bag of weed off a guy on the street. Those kind of things, they actually cause you to be uneasy, and then it's almost like it breeds this kind of addictive behaviour because you're like constantly thinking about it. Whereas like it's almost like the times when I've been in Amsterdam, I've thought less about weed than the times when I've been in the UK, because I just know I could go into a coffee shop and have my pick of strains. If I want that kind for that, if I want a really strong one, I can pick that one. Whereas here it's like, fuck, I don't know, am I going to pick up something, is it shit? It's all going to be the same money for something shit and something good, and I could just completely waste my money. I don't know. I just think, when it comes down to it, really, it's this sort of the attitude of people who don't do drugs, and the propaganda around drugs has turned it into an escape. I don't think by the very nature of people wanting to change their consciousness. I mean, look, in instances, it can be used as an escape, and I certainly have used substances as an escape, but I don't know. And I'm still struggling with, escape is the right word. Possibly, as like a coping mechanism for things. I lost my mum when I was 11, and I really am quite aware of the fact that I smoke a lot of weed, partly because it does have this sort of caring female energy to it. You're smoking these female plants, it has a healing nature to it, and in my mind that is something I'm aware of.
That's interesting, because when I posed the question about ketamine earlier on, you couldn't say whether you couldn't respond to the idea of ketamine being feminine energy. But you were saying, why do you say cannabis it is?
I think on the basis that you're smoking the female cannabis plant, so you're not smoking the male plant, which is hemp. You're smoking the female plant, so you are actually.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you're actually.
So the male plants don't have the psychoactive ingredients.
No. It's a really interesting one, in things like Rastafari culture, they call cannabis the lover, because the men go off and smoke it on their own without the women. In Hinduism, it's like, the concept of Shiva, this like strong female, male, female energy.
Are you're not in any kind of academic study at the moment?
No.
So the process of learning is about psychedelia.
But I've got a PhD constantly in the back of my mind, which I've attempted to pursue a couple of times and sort of fallen short a bit of some concrete questions. I've got a lot of ideas in place.
Do you have anything in front of you that you can say? Do you have a general direction where you feel yourself going, or is there?
I mean, I'm certainly the only person doing anything to do with humour and psychedelics.
So you're still very much with
the I'm still very much interested in that, going further down the mystical side of things, looking at concepts such as crazy wisdom. Yeah, so like there's it's kind of in like Zen Buddhist thought, but a couple of people. It's the concept that basically you go so far down the rabbit hole that there's nothing left to figure out, other than just to kind of laugh at everything and see it as like this pointless endeavour to actually try and figure everything out. And kind of focusing on this idea of humour as this way of taking people out of their ordinary mindset, turning situations on their head.
Do you actually do stand up?
I don't know, not at all. No, I just absolutely love watching it.
Is the idea of being kind of a participant in the audience?
Yeah, or to the point of living the way that you would want to if you were kind of shaken out of your ordinary mindset. So kind of not necessarily buying into conventions, being able to kind of, I don't know, do things in lots of different ways. Or
so from what I'm getting from you is that your kind of experience of life and the way that your trajectory is being influenced by being in flux, being in your consciousness being in flux. So being not being in a conventional 9 to 5 consumerist.
Even though I am currently in a very conventional 9 to 5 consumerist lifestyle, I think a lot of it has to do with the attitude to it. I really think, like for example, my job, I work with a lot of people who, well, everyone's from a sales background apart from me. Everyone is absolutely money focused. It's all about money. It's all about hitting targets. And whilst I'm simultaneously,
what sales you're doing?
It's working for a fundraising company, so it's and I do everything to do with like licenses and venue booking and stuff like that. And it's all, sales reps have got to hit their, sign ups and hit targets and everything. And as much as I'm involved in it, I'm simultaneously like mentally trying as much as I can to abstract myself from it every day, all the time, just not getting wrapped up in it. It's kind of difficult line to tread, because it's like you need to be a bit consumerist and everything to be able to pay your bills and rent and
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really,
that's brilliant.
Really interesting. Really
fantastic.
Nice to be able to do this.
Once again, I'd like to thank Ollie for a surprising journey through psychedelia, mystical experiences, religious concepts, and a critique of capitalism. In the new year, all of the new podcasts will be with people involved in art in some way. So I have many more performance artists coming up, and have already done several interviews with performance artists. I've also got a lawyer from Ghana who's also a TV star and is socialite extraordinaire. I have a British-born London Iranian musician, jazz poet and percussionist, and I have a sculptor coming up as well, and many more to come. So thank you very much for your time, and see you in an exciting new year.